Hello everybody, welcome back to Newegg TV. I'm Steve. Today I'm going to do an overview on this wireless AC1900 router. This is the Nighthawk R7000 from NETGEAR. So this is an AC1900 router. And for those who don't already know, this is actually new technology. They've increased the N-band spatial streams from 150 megabits per second to the new theoretical limit, which is 200 megabits per second. So if you do the math, 3 streams at 200 per stream, that gives you a total of 600 megabits per second on the N band alone. Then add that to the 1300 on the AC band, and you're looking at 1900 total theoretical. So thank you Broadcom for that tech, and thank you NETGEAR for employing it in this router. Also, they have a 1 gigahertz dual core processor in this thing, and that's pretty important. Why? Because consumer routers typically have at best 800 megahertz dual core routers installed. This is the first one to come to market with the 1 gigahertz dual core. So enough about that. Let me flip it to the back, talk to you a little bit about the features on this particular device. So gaming wise, they want to tout the fact that that 1 gigahertz processor is actually going to help you deal with more packets at a time, giving you better response, lower pings, I guess if you want to say, but really it's more about the throughput. But bottom line is that they've also given you prioritization for you if you use the advanced QoS that's built into the system. You're going to get prioritization that they've worked in for Xbox One and Xbox 360 online gaming. So for those of you who are out there gaming, it's a good thing to think about. And that is using their advanced QoS, and they're trying to lower the lag as much as possible for gaming. On top of that, if we drop down to streaming, basically you're looking at better throughput for all of the packets, hence the streaming is going to look a lot better. Also, you're looking at having the ability to use a USB 3.0 port to give you a little bit more speed when you're using files on this particular device and sharing them. Speaking of sharing files, it's DLNA compatible, which basically means that you'll be able to share your files via this device as it acts as a DLNA server to play on your TV or on your game consoles, different media that you have stored with it on USB or USB hard drives or USB flash drives. Also, it can let you be used as a iTunes server to play all your goodies for iOS devices. Also, in the mobile area, they are using the beamforming, as well as beamforming in general, I should mention. Beamforming Plus is being used and employed in this particular router to help you get better connection to your devices. Beamforming, if you don't already know, allows you to connect a single device to this router and strengthen that connection. It doesn't just work with a single device, but that's just how they define it. It actually seeks out the one that's trying to get connected and strengthens that connection. That being said, they're also using beamforming, of course, for mobile devices, which is going to help you get a better connection and increase the range of your devices. Also, it's going to allow, this particular router also has AirPrint compatibility, which means if you have an iOS device, you'll be able to print to your printer that's attached to this without having to buy a special AirPrint compatible printer. You just plug in a printer to the back of this router and it'll do all the work for you. Also, their app, Easy Mobile Connect, allows you to scan a QR code on your smartphone and get your phone connected to your home network with ease. And finally, the technical specs. As I mentioned before, the AC1900 is adding together the 600 from the 2.4 gigahertz band and using the 256-bit QAM support, or CAM, depending on how you want to say it. Also, the 1300 megabits per second on the AC side, giving you the total of 1900. It is dual band Wi-Fi, so it is able to transmit and receive on both the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz band. Beamforming already mentioned. The fact that it has a 1 gigahertz processor also I've already mentioned. Memory, it's got 128 megabyte flash on board to help with the firmware and any kind of software for it. And also 256 megabytes of RAM to go along with that 1 gigahertz processor, helping this thing to just move all your packets as quickly as humanly or non-humanly possible. Downstream and upstream QoS, I mentioned before, as their advanced QoS, and a ReadyShare USB, which is allowing you to share your USB hard drive or printers via this particular router. Also IPv6 support, and I think that about wraps it up. Let's look at the device itself. All right, so here's all the accessories that come in the box. Let me start first by the installation guide. They do provide with you more than one language, so let me remove the ones that aren't English because I'm better at English than anything else. Then you can see that you have a couple different things, the QR code that you're going to need to actually you could use the QR code, I should say, to see a video on it, on how to install. Just a couple pages in here on exactly what you can expect in this particular manual. So that being said, they also provide for you a $25 music credit for what looks like e-music. So you'll get that as well. Then NETGEAR's little pamphlet showing you all the other little goodies that you can get from NETGEAR and to go along with this particular device. And then we have a license, public license, so that this way you know what firmware you have, excuse me, with the software that they have built into this router. Here's the license for it. Aside from that, also a reminder to go get your firmware update and exactly how you could follow those steps in order to update your product. Always important whenever you have a router, especially if you start running into problems. They also give you one Ethernet cable that's actually very clearly labeled on which side goes to what, although it really doesn't matter which direction you plug these things into. It's probably more for telephone support when they're calling in to ask if something is plugged in properly and for installation purposes. So AC brick that also comes with it. And of course this goes into the wall and this goes into the device. Don't get confused there. Also 3 antennas, and these are dual band antennas. Not that that should matter too much, but because it is a 3x3 TXRX on both of the bands. So let's start talking about the router. I want to mention, like most routers nowadays, that NETGEAR is actually showing you your Wi-Fi SSID and the network key password, and also pre-passwording it. So this way, when you first get it turned on, people can't just automatically connect to it and start administering your router before you even knew you had to. So at the very bottom here, there's a series of LEDs, and I want to go kind of down the line with you. First and foremost, there is the power LED, letting you know, of course, you have power. Internet connection, 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz connectivity. The USB 1 and 2, this one is for the USB 3.0 connectivity, and this is for the USB 2.0 on the back of the router. This is for ports, Ethernet ports 1, 2, 3, and 4, as well as this being an LED and an on-off switch for the wireless radios. So you could just shut them off if you don't want wireless connectivity, or maybe the kids should be in bed, so you just want to shut that off. Then at the far end here, we have the WPS button, so this way you can get Wi-Fi protected setup going between your devices and allow them to connect safely and very easily with that button. Let me flip to the back of it real quick and show you that there's actually plenty of ventilation. In fact, for the most part, it's pretty much all over the bottom of it as well as on either side. Kind of an interesting look to this router. But we have the SMA plugs here, or the SMA jacks, I should say. 3 of them. Why is that important, you might think? Well, it's because you need to know that you can actually purchase a different set of antennas instead of using the ones that come in the box. So if you want to have a better antenna, an omnidirectional or maybe a directional antenna that's maybe higher gain than what you currently have, maybe help you solve your wireless or customize your home wireless setup and solve any problems you might have. These are really nice to have. Aside from that, you do have the 4 Ethernet Gigabit Ethernet ports, the WAN port here leading to your cable modem or DSL modem, depending on how you have it set up. The USB 2.0 port, you're going to need that when you're sharing the your printer, or you could also set it up for a USB hard drive. They have storage that they want you to use in the front, and I'll mention that when we get there. Aside from that, you could be sharing the printer with this and do that AirPrint compatibility with the iOS devices. On-off switch here, of course shutting off the device when you're not using it and you don't want to just yank the plug out. And the power plug here. I'll move that to the side and show you some more of that, that ventilation I mentioned before. It's the same on both sides. On the front is a USB 3.0 port. And the reason I mentioned this last is because, first and foremost, you should probably recognize, why isn't it on the back, right? Well, NETGEAR did some research. They found that USB ports that were utilizing storage, like a flash drive, for instance, for some reason was interfering with the transmission and reception of the antennas on the back. So they decided, let's just move it to the front and ignore all that altogether. That being said, that's what they did. So when you're mounting this on the wall this direction, you would have the device kind of sticking out of the bottom here. So just keep that in mind. Speaking of mounting, let me flip it to the back and actually show you what the back looks like. ton more ventilation here. Actually, this is mostly ventilation, I should say. Then, of course, router login information. Important if you ever need to remember what it is. Of course, it's admin and password if you're not used to it. And the login is routerlogin.net. And that would be because it sets up DNS already on this to give you that particular connection, I'm sure. Just a guess on my part. If I'm wrong, don't hold me to it. More information, the serial number, but most importantly, the MAC if you want to end up sending this, setting this device up for something special on your network. If this is not your primary router, you have another router before this one, getting that MAC address and setting it up for a specific IP is also helpful. So let's look at the GUI. I do want to mention one small thing before I get much further. The reset button was right next to the antenna, and when I was rushing through the overview of the actual device, I did forget to mention that. Aside from that, we're here to talk about the GUI now. So first things first, I want to mention that I had our Chrome browser here going to Google first as the startup page when I first started it. And this router recognized that I was trying to go somewhere on the internet and dropped me, instead of where I wanted to go, which it wasn't completely set up for, to 192.168.1.1. Helpful if you have something like that set up and you just were like, how do I do this? And it'll force you to go to the correct IP address. And also a nice shortcut if you know that's here for this particular router. Anyway, so now that we're here, it says to me right away, oh, we're successfully connected to the internet, that's great, and everything's good, and here's all your wireless information, which is awesome that it's already set up with a password, but not what you need to know as a home user. You need to set up your admin password, and it's a very common mistake not to have the default password change. So second time around, try to get reconnected, and look, I got a success page, yay, you're on the internet. Still, good that I'm on the internet, good that I know I'm connected, but still not enough for home use. Third time's a charm though, got connected in, and here we are at the home page. So I do want to mention it is really important for you to go ahead and get that admin password changed. I'm actually going to show you where it is really quickly. Under advanced and then administration and then set password. And the default password is of course password, so you'll type that in here and then you'll set your new password. I recommend using something that uses numbers, capital letters, possibly symbols. But if you still get locked out, you do have the enable password recovery. You'll have this information here and you could then set up your own questions and answers. So just so you know, it doesn't matter if it's really tough or not, you still have a backup option thanks to this password recovery feature that the NETGEAR has set up for you. So back to the basic page just to go over a really quick overview of what the GUI actually looks like. This does require a firmware upgrade and you could do that. In fact, you should do that as soon as you get connected. Aside from that, at the home page in the basic screen, you're going to see whether or not you're connected to the internet, your current wireless status, as well as the SSID passwords and SSID, I should say. How many devices are currently attached to the router via wireless or directly connected via the Ethernet cables. The status of your parental controls. If you're a parent and you want to know, hey, has it been disabled because my kid is really smart and he hacked the password, this is where you'd figure that out. Also, whether or not ReadyShare is set up and if you have any USB drive, be it flash or hard disk drive connected to it. Also, if your guest network is set up, and currently neither of these are, all three of these are not set up. You'll also be able to see all this information on the NETGEAR Genie app, which is free, and you'll be able to pick that up from your respective app stores, be it for Android or iOS devices. Moving along, the internet page will show you some of the basic settings when you're getting set up for internet. Wireless here, attached devices, and right now it's probably going to populate, there it is, with the Cosmos 2 PC, that's the computer name on the computer that's currently connected, its IP address and its MAC address. You could also jump to access control here to block or allow different devices. If you are a parent, as I mentioned before, you do have parental controls here. NETGEAR allows you to go to live parental controls, which is their kind of their web-based live parental controls for this particular unit. netgear.com/LPC if you're interested in doing some of that. ReadyShare, and this is what we mentioned before about being able to share your printers as well as other things. Then we have the guest network, enabling that. It's pretty fairly self-explanatory here. Also, what type of security protocols and security options you're going to use for your guest network. But let's flip over to advanced, where there's a ton more stuff. But for those users like myself, I do like to see everything that's available to me in the advanced menu, and don't hide it from me in the basic menu. So the setup wizard, if you want to run through it, really simple wizard to help you set it up. WPS wizard, that's going to help you get your WPS, your Wi-Fi protected setup for different clients to use WPS to get connected here. Your standard setup for the internet, for the wireless, your WAN, LAN setups. Also QoS setup. This is pretty important because they do have some advanced QoS here, separated also by the upstream as well as the downstream. Also all built into this hardware, and firmware updates will continue to improve that. Guest network, as I already mentioned before. USB storage for your basic settings, advanced settings. You could set up that media server, as I mentioned before. Because it is DLNA compatible, it can act as a DLNA server, a media server, to allow your TV and other devices like that to be able to view it. Excuse me, to share media from this device to your TV or your gaming systems. And apparently including a TiVo support. Kind of cool, actually. As well as having iTunes media server support. That basically means if you had another computer on your network that had iTunes on it, you'd be able to share those files via this router. Oops, that's also the parental controls, which I already mentioned before. In the security category, access control, mentioned that earlier, where you could grant access or block them based on their MAC addresses. Blocking sites, blocking certain ports or services, as well as scheduling certain things that need to be blocked, as well as setting up email notifications. Under that administration, I already showed you one thing in here, but the router status, the log page, attached devices, which I actually have already shown you. Backup settings, fairly important. This is where you're going to be backing up the actual settings for this device, but it does remind me of one other thing you can do, because this router has a ReadyShare vault when you set up ReadyShare. It's basically free software to allow for automatic PC backup to a USB hard drive, which you'll obviously have to provide yourself, or as long as it's connected to this particular router, it will let you back them up to this vault, to this ReadyShare vault. Also, time machine support, important if you are a Mac user, because you can set up automatic Mac backups to a USB drive as well. And I already showed you setting up the password, router updates. And if you had a specific file you already downloaded and didn't want to use the automatic router firmware upgrade right here. And wireless settings, wireless access point, wireless repeating, as well as enabling those. Port forwarding, dynamic DNS, VPN services, static route page, your router management, UPnP, IPv6, the traffic meter. You'll also be able to see this, I believe, in the app as well, and USB settings for any USB device. Just so I can show you, I'm going to click on that firmware update and allow it to connect to NETGEAR server and see what we see with the newest update that's coming up. There it is. A new version has been found. You want to upgrade it now? And so if it was you should be clicking yes. All right, everybody, that just about wraps up this overview of NETGEAR's R7000 Nighthawk AC1900 wireless router. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to click the like button. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to any of our various YouTube channels, and we'll see you guys soon.